Well, the record actually occurs in the future. The story has two time frames, which would actually everything is in the future because um, part of it is in the near future and part is in the distant future. But actually, the specific time in years is never really made clear in the story. I think for the reason that we didn't want to make it seem like it was so far into the future that when you hear about the sun of in 10 million years it's not going to be there or whatever, no one really worries about it much because they have a 2:15 dinner engagement. But if there was a certain feeling that it could happen within the next 5 to 10 years, then people would pay more attention to it. And we're not even saying that such a thing could ever happen. All it is good drama. I think that was the original intention. My intention was originally to look for something that created good drama, because that's what stories are all about, an antagonist and a protagonist, and that's what we have here. In the story we have Jonathan Chance, who, with Kilroy, are the protagonists, and you have, of course, the evil Dr. Righteous, who's the antagonist. And the issue is, in this case, censorship. And it's censorship of rock and roll music. And as a sideline to this whole idea of who is to say what's, who's to be the arbiter for what people are allowed to read and listen to on record, is the idea of a world where technology plays a really important role, and a role which I guess is exemplified by these Japanese robots, which are called Mr. Robotos. The robots really have taken all kinds of jobs away from people. I think when I first started to formulate my ideas about this story, I really didn't take the idea of Righteous, I didn't take him as seriously as perhaps many people do. I suppose it's naive on my part, but I didn't really perceive him as a real threat. But the more I got into creating this and talking to people about this character and so on and so forth, the more I found out that the reality was that there was really a very strong movement and feeling against rock and roll music. Kind of a moralistic Johnny Carson, as being a subtle, charming, witty, charismatic type of guy. If collectively the group decides that that's what we want to do, I think we'll probably pursue that. It would be an interesting step in our career. We by no means pretend to be anything than what we are, which is rock and roll musicians. But the opportunity that this kind of thing has afforded us, a thing which is due in a large part to the people who have supported our music over all these years. It's just it's kind of a wonderful situation to be able to try your hand at these different things as a creative outlet. It's wonderful, and if we can do well at it, I would like to see it be made into a motion picture if it could be really a good one. It was a challenge in that we really wanted to write songs that were, on the one hand, obviously related to the project, but yet wouldn't be so specific to the project that they would have no meaning outside of it. The songwriters, being J.Y. and Tommy and myself, really worked together, I think, more on this project, not necessarily as collaborating songwriters, but just in our intent. Okay, in other words, we were able to really focus on this thing. And in times past, albums like The Grand Illusion and Paradise Theater, which were semi-conceptual, which had a basic theme, both musical and ideological, running through them. They were never as specific as this is, because this is really a story with characters and a real plot. It was more of a challenge. I know in my heart we met the challenge. How do I feel about it? I'm apprehensive, and I'm really excited. I know there will be no problem for us to do it. It'll just be a matter of working it out and doing it. They'll be able to see my face, and I'll be able to see their faces. And I mean, STYX didn't always play in big arenas. There were lots and lots and lots of years that we played in clubs and small halls and gymnasiums and small halls, and we did all that for a real long time. And like you said, until STYX had been a band since 1970, and it was until 1977 that we really afforded the luxury of playing in big halls.
Last year, when I got a phone call from the record company, a good friend at the record company called up and said, you won't believe what the California legislature is doing out here. They're saying that there's satanic messages backwards on records, specifically one of your records, and a number of other artists, and to which I immediately laughed very loudly and said, this is ridiculous. And, the fact that any governmental body is seriously considering such an issue. Of course, I imagine if I sat in a state legislature anywhere, I could be highly amused by the other things that they consider. But this one obviously was particularly amusing because it related to me and the band personally. So, obviously there was no intent on our part to have any satanic messages. And when there's forward messages on records such as Running with the Devil or That Old Devil Moon by Frank Sinatra, there's enough stuff that's legitimately there to not have to, for any group of people. There's so much hunger and violence and sadness in the world that to go through and listen to records backwards seems to me totally unproductive. Let me unequivocally say that we have never put a satanic message backwards on our record. But let me also say that on the next record there will be some backwards messages. Well, Dennis, who originated the concept of Kilroy Was Here, and kind of, I think, in his own mind, because he wanted us to really feel a part of it and go for it, has known that I've always felt that I could play the villain. That's kind of the character I portray on stage. And I always knew that, never thought of myself as an actor, but I said if I was an actor, probably the one part I could play would be the part of Ming the Merciless, which is what I've always wanted to play. And so Dennis, knowing this, patterned the character Dr. Reich. It's not exactly that way. I'm supposed to be a little bit more subdued and a little bit more, not so evil, more insidiously sort of salesman-like evil. So it took a certain amount of that, and certainly on the heavy metal Poisoning promo where I play Dr. Righteous, that's more Ming than it is the soft sell. That's rather me on the edge of dementia. But I think with my, it's something that I enjoyed doing that day. It was one of the biggest highs I've had this year since we got off the stage. It was really the only performing I'd done in front of people, and it was a buzz, I'll tell you. Well, the song itself, the whole idea of this, maybe, if not the heaviest song we've ever recorded, certainly among the heaviest rock songs we've ever recorded, with the sledgehammer guitars and the chainsaw drumming, is quite obviously a heavy metal song. And to be singing about heavy metal is poison to your ears, to your mind, to your body, is a bit tongue-in-cheek. As John Panazza would say, none of us are going to get out of here alive anyway, so let's have a good time about it. We're just making a comment that this is America. Novus Ordo Seclorum, a new order of the ages is formed, and separation of church and state, that's what it's all about. So we're just kind of making a little bit of an ambivalent comment on society here in this song and with this whole statement. Just before the Paradise Theater tour, as we were sitting around rehearsing to go on the road, we all kind of came to the conclusion that we'd been very successful, and we wanted to kind of do something, try and give something in return and make a positive statement to our public that we were, very appreciative of the success we've achieved and appreciate everyone's support in doing so. And we all decided that solar energy and was one of the things we all felt very strongly about. And with my engineering background, I was appointed the spokesman by the group. And needless to say, I think all of us had been interested in this idea for a long time, but we never really sat down and talked about it with the career pressures and touring pressures and album pressures and all those other things. So based on all that, I became involved with a group called the Solar Lobby, and we did a number of sort of promotional things where I showed up and did some radio interviews and made it on some nationally syndicated radio things. And all along people would say, wouldn't it be a great idea if we could have a solar-powered concert? So that and a number of other things that we had talked about kind of all came together, and basically the birth of Solar Ginny 1 came about as a result of the efforts of our group and a number of other people, Solar West Electric, who built the unit at cost, really below cost, and Ty Braswell, who was kind of the spearhead of that effort. Solar Ginny 1 was basically our answer to how we were going to try and have the first solar-powered concert. And to me, this thing is the best portable promotional item for solar energy. I think people in this country, my big statement on this whole topic is that the energy crisis has been conceptually solved. It's just that our government is not aware of it, and so many people are not aware of it. And Solar Ginny 1 is kind of the thing we created that's going to tell, that hopefully can go around to people so people can actually touch solar energy instead of thinking it's just something that can occur in California or in 30 or 40 years from now.
Now, this is without a doubt the most finely polished and finely scrutinized and most painfully produced album STYX has ever come close to making, if only in the number of times that we've taken it apart, done major surgery on it, and put it back together, and then still said no. One thing that making the film did, especially the time that we made the film, probably 3/4 of the way through the album sessions, since none of us had ever really done anything other than your basic prehistoric rock videos, and that was without direction or without anything, without budget or anything. And we did this the right way, and we were under the direction of a filmmaker, and at times it didn't seem like it was very much fun being told, do it again, again. But ultimately, as you'll see in the film, everyone appears to be doing a great job. They are actually doing a great job, but what came out of that was applying some of that same science when we got back into the studio. Because I know I re-sang my stuff, and I said, Dennis, go in there and play like Brian Gibson and tell me how bad I am, and just make me get it a little bit better. Because I can take it. It doesn't bother me, to try and be just a little bit better. And that's what happened. I think it's real obvious on my vocals on this album that it's the best vocal performance I've ever had on a record to this date. Just Get Through This Night was conceived and demoed in a studio in Tokyo a couple of days after we finished the Paradise Theater tour. the 132nd show of it or something like that in Japan. And I stayed over and demoed a song and finished writing it so that I could demo it, which is usually the case. And really didn't change very much other than the fact that we polished it and I rewrote a couple of lyric lines so they were easier to understand. And just really polished it up, sang the shit out of it. One of the main things that we concentrated on was so that this project, as all-encompassing as it may seem, was not too intimidating the first time that you saw it or heard it. At the same time, not being so sophomoric that it's an insult that we're talking down to our fans. And that may sound silly, but you have to choose which way you're going to go with it. We all believe so strongly in the messages and the ultimate message that the project has, that it was worth just exploring and scrutinizing and just creating detail after endless finite details, to the point where now the details are sort of a luxury. If someone has a great pair of headphones, I suggest they listen and absorb the meaning of the story and then just listen for little details in there, because they're there. To the point that there is some backwards Latin on the album somewhere that it took us 2 weeks to find out what it meant. It came from a very, very familiar source. In fact, you probably have that Latin in your pocket right now. Serious. And when we found out what it meant, we said we have to put it on the album because it's perfect. So they'll be so busy playing this silly thing backwards. I hope they don't miss the forward intent. It's great forward. Back, it's a little scratchy. Not good for your turntable. Kilroy, basically a man whose circumstances went beyond his control, all to the liking of this Dr. Righteous character, he doesn't really represent any one particular man in time right now, but he's like a what if. There are all the elements of Dr. Righteous succeeding right now and very much alive. Well, Dr. Righteous is kind of a cross between Ernest Angley and Monty Hall. And he's taken advantage of rough times by making a pretty simple solution to all our problems, that being rock and roll music is bad, it's causing moral decay, and moral decay is the reason everything is so bad right now. So they started this movement called the Majority for Musical Morality, which in essence banned rock and roll. Enter Jonathan Chance, whose curiosity and his power is just being the group leader, a guy who always seemed to be in charge and not very disciplined at all, more self-confident of himself and less appreciative of certain types of power, i.e. Dr. Righteous. And his interest and curiosity about rock music and all of his friends wondering why everybody was going so gung-ho about let's destroy rock. Why? I mean, what was so bad about rock? Let's find out. And so him and his friends collect things, and they find old paraphernalia. They even dress like old rock and roll, let their hair grow out a little bit again. And they've taken it upon themselves to undermine this Dr. Righteous in any way, shape, or form that they can, and try and bring back this rock music that was supposed to be so bad.
It's been some time since we have played the smaller rooms, and during that stage of our career, during that time of our career, we really weren't headlining. We were in a support position, and we all know what that means and what that entails. I think in the past, STYX has been a visual act, and I think we're expanding on that very much so. In the respect that STYX fans come to our shows and they bring more than their ears with them. They bring their eyes. They bring all their senses. I think what we have now is we've taken what we've done in the past and been very visual and been very had a lot of movement on stage, and we've kind of refined it to a theme, a story, and I think that's going to our fans are going to really enjoy that. You know, knowing that we're not going to just go out there and just play a bunch of music. We're setting ourselves apart from other acts. Be prepared to bring all your senses to the next STYX show, because we plan on stimulating all of them. To Japan, when we were back there in January, it was the first time in a long time we did play small halls, 1,800 seat rooms, 2,000 seat rooms, 2,500 seat rooms, and me personally, you know, for the first time in a long time, even though we have a very sophisticated monitor system, I was able to hear everybody on stage, every ambient sound that was going on. Yeah, I think that our Japanese experience had a lot to do with the new show, had a lot to do with the fact that we were, of course, we had plans on playing the smaller rooms before we got to Japan, and all the Japanese experience did was solidify the fact that we can play small rooms again and play them well. I'm looking forward to playing the small rooms. It'll be good. It'll be good for all of us. I have a fondness for all the electricity that's found in a large room. I love looking out in front of 12,000 people, 15,000 people. And many, many times, you know, you don't always have the intimacy in the large rooms. But speaking for myself, I feed off the energy coming from the people that gets to me, and then I transfer it back. It's like electricity, you know. It always comes back. It's just constant for me. I really am looking forward to playing this tour, both the small rooms, where we're going to have everything we could possibly want. You know, we'll play our small rooms, and we'll get off on that, and then we'll go to the larger rooms. I know I have a good time there.
We were all very enthused to go into the recording studio and put out an excellent album. I think with that idea behind, that is exactly what we achieved. We set our goals. Everyone was unified in that thought and pursued it and wanted to achieve that. Really, I don't know, you know, good material, good performances, good packaging. You know, the entire concept of what an album is. So it all worked. It all blended together. Everyone was in a positive spirit.